All right, so I start out with the next section by reading the phrase up on the board. The coach says if you miss 3 practices, you'll be off the team. You just missed your 3rd practice. What do you think will happen? So if you think about this for a second or two, hopefully you take it by heart what the actual sentence says or that the coach said. And unfortunately, you would expect that that person would get kicked off the team. All right, so this is an example then of something called an if-then statement or a conditional statement, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So, conditional statements is our title. And a conditional statement is just simply, like we just got done showing you, an if-then statement. And it's not real creative how we got the name of it. It's just there's an if part and there's the then part. Okay? So we're going to use these to kind of clarify statements or make things to pretty much put things out there and make it exact statements that you can understand. All right? So in an if-then statement, the part after if, and this is right after the word if, is the hypothesis. This is something that you're coming up with. Right? We talked about hypothesis before. It's a educated guess, you putting something out there for whatever situation that you might want to be talking about. Okay, so it's the hypothesis. The second part of this, the part after then, we would say is the conclusion. So the first part, we're putting something out there, we're saying something in general. The second part, we're giving it a conclusion. So we're putting something there to finish the question. The answer to the question presented would be what we're trying to show. When you're talking about if-then statements, like what we were talking about yesterday, another way of writing this is using an arrow. So for our conditional statements, we would say if whatever P is, then we come to the conclusion of whatever Q says. But it's just another way of writing a conditional statement. So as you do this now, we're going to look at compound sentences with if-then in them, and you should have to come up with the if part and the then part. Now, in some situations, you might actually have to write the sentence first. In most cases, it doesn't really matter what order you write them, but I would always try to write them in the order that the sentence is given. So for this one right here, it says write the statement in if-then form, and then basically you're going to come to the conclusion, is that true or false? So in this case right here, we would say if an angle is 40 degrees, then it is acute. So you can include some words, you can put in a descriptive word. It doesn't really matter that you extend what the initial sentence said, but you're just coming out. And then you would, again, answer the question, is this true or false? So if an angle is 40 degrees, is it acute? You ask yourself, yeah, that would be true, right? Anything less than 90 degrees would get you to be an acute angle. So in that case, then we would say true, and we'd go on. In the next example, we're going to write angles with the same measure are congruent in if-then form. So in this case, you probably want to include some more words. So we would say if you had angles with the same measure, then they are considered to be congruent. Is that true or false again? If angles with the same measure, they are congruent? Yeah, that's true. So a lot of these at the beginning are going to all be true because they just want you to practice writing them in if-then form. Find the hypothesis and conclusion in this sentence. So now we're carrying it on where they actually give you the if-then statement and you're asked to find out what you have. So if it is Tuesday, then Phil plays tennis. So again, my hypothesis, anything after the word if, so it is Tuesday would be my hypothesis, and Phil plays tennis is my conclusion. When you're asked to do this on the quiz or the test, you do not have to include if or then in your hypothesis or conclusion. So again, then you could ask, well, I know that today is Wednesday. Do I know where Phil's going to be? Not necessarily, but if it's a Tuesday, we know that Phil would be playing tennis sometime. A couple more examples of this, or one more at least. It says, find the hypothesis and conclusion of. If 3 points lie on a line, then they are collinear. So again, this one, anything after if is my hypothesis. So 3 points lie on a line. My conclusion, they are collinear. Again, then you would ask yourself, is this true or false? And we'll get into that here in just a second. So the next part of this then is truth values. Of conditionals. So this would be kind of what we did in the previous section when we made those little charts. We're basically saying, is this true or false? And we're trying to figure out. So is the hypothesis true? Is the conclusion true? It's all a possibility that some of them are true, some of them are false. Part of it is true, part of it is not. One of the things that you have to realize is that the hypothesis and conclusion can be either true or false. So you're going to read it and you're going to decide, is whatever was written down true or false? From there, the next thing that you have to decide on is if the hypothesis, so again, the first part, the part right after if, is not accomplished, meaning it can't be true, you can't do it, you can't come up with the right answer. Then the truth value can't be determined. So if you read the problem and you can't really figure out the hypothesis, the whole thing cannot be decided. Okay? Now here's the one that gets everybody a little bit mixed up. If a conditional